A total of 47 inmates at the Olokuta Correctional Facility in Akure, Ondo State capital, are now free. This comes after the federal government paid 6 million naira fine incurred by the inmates. The move is in line with the renewed hope agenda of the current administration to decongest correctional facilities across the country. Ayodeji Muradeyo has details.
These inmates are the lucky ones who have been granted freedom by the federal government. They have been inmates at the correctional facility due to their inability to pay fines leveled against them by the court. The Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, said the exercise is in fulfillment of the federal government resolve to decongest correctional facilities across the country.
That you please go out there, stay off crime, stay off criminality.
Represented here, the minister said 4,000 inmates from correctional facilities nationwide will benefit from the exercise.
They will be leaving today. Apart from paying the compensation and the fine, we'll be giving them transportation to go home. Each of them will be getting 10,000 naira each, which is about the first of its time. To let Nigerians know that this government is really, really, really interested in everybody.
Lots of advice were also given to the lucky inmates.
We would also be encouraging them that they should not come back here. Whatever I did that brought them here, we would encourage them to say that when you get out there, behave yourself and be a part of of every Nigerian trying to make Nigeria a better place.
The controller of corrections in Ondo State, Jude Agboje, said the inmates were selected across the state.
Yeah, when the minister came up to say that anybody having a fine of 1 million downwards, that he will arrange for the payment. Then we have to send a list. This is a second chance, and that they should go out there to be good people, to contribute their own quota.
Many inmates are expected to regain freedom at the end of the exercise, courtesy the renewed hope agenda of the current government in Nigeria. Ayodeji Muradeyo, TVC News, Akure.
All right. The government had talked about the release of over 4,000 inmates sentenced for various offenses or terms of imprisonment with the option of fine and compensation in custodial centers nationwide. And that is part of what we are seeing happening in Ondo State, where the federal government has paid 6 million naira fines incurred by these inmates. Recall that this matter of decongestion of prisons has been in the front burner for quite some time now, because the report has it that we have over 80,000 inmates in 253 custodial facilities nationwide, and the total installed capacity for the 253 custodial centers adds up to less than 50,000. It's a good move by government, Kevin.
Especially when you look at the statistics again, most of the inmates are those awaiting trial. A minimal number of the inmates are those who have, their cases have been concluded in courts, across the courts. And so we have so many of them for one reason or the other. Many of them cannot even meet bail. Their cases are even yet to commence or have commenced, but they are bailable offenses, but they cannot leave because for some reason they cannot afford, or maybe they're having issues with the sureties or one of those, blockades. And so this is a welcome development. We understand that in Lagos, there was supposed to be a similar initiative done last Thursday, but we were told at the last minute that the Minister of Interior was not going to be available to come. And so it's going to be a welcome development because, of course, Lagos also bears an unenviable chunk of, many of these inmates who are flooding the correctional facilities. And you recall, was it last year or so, where it was agreed that state governments are now also going to be partnering or working with the federal government to cater for the inmates across, correctional facilities. Now, after all, the argument was that most of these inmates are your are from your cases,
state.
are from state courts, are from, state people who are found to be erring of, state offenses, are not exactly federal offenses. So it was expected that, the state government, in addition with the federal government, will now work hand in hand to, ensure better welfare for this inmates, because it is crucial, the issue of, reoffenders. Now that these ones have they've gotten a reprieve, they are now free. What happens to them? There's also that issue of, them being effectively rehabilitated and reintegrated to ensure that they don't go back to what brought them to prison in the first place.
In fact, you had one of the respondents speaking to that effect, that whatever brought them, he is admonishing them, not that whatever brought them into the prison, they should hands off such things, so to speak. But you have released them. How are we rehabilitating them back into the society? Are we ensuring that they are fully engaged to do something meaningful for themselves and their families as it is right now? These are critical areas that I believe that the government needs to begin to look into as well. If you are saying you want to release this person, very good. But what would they do? What would they find to do? Because it is said, and I do mind, is a devil's workshop. And so if these persons do not have something doing, if perhaps while they were in prison, they learned one thing or the other and are not able to, put that into proper practice and proper use, whatever knowledge they garnered, for those who got one knowledge or the other, then they will begin to find somewhere to engage their minds, which will not be ideal for the society we have found ourselves. So I believe it's important that government begins to look into that aspect. State governments especially begin to look into that aspect. We've seen NGOs who are doing one thing or the other with regards to that, engaging these people, rehabilitating them, training them, empowering them one way or the other. But state governments now have to take up that responsibility because they have the resources that some of these NGOs do not have. They have the structure that some of these NGOs do not have. I believe that collaborating with the private sector is critical to achieving some of these things.
It will indeed go a long way. Of course, there's been work on the ground. There's also the issue of how the society, views these former inmates. There's also, just as there was concern about people going to the Stockholm syndrome affecting hostages, former hostages of terrorists and the likes. And that is primarily because of the way society views them upon their return. It's also the same thing too for former inmates, the way society views them. Many of them don't even have a family to go to, talk less of, the larger community of support that they also need. Of course, we also know the issue with our laws, again, that says former inmates cannot, run for office. Even before you get to that point of saying you want to run for office,
some organizations will not give you jobs.
Absolutely, can you even apply for a job? So many of them are, basically jobless, they're roaming around, they're helpless. And how much, as you say, can the NGOs do? I know of a particular NGO who has even gone on to employ some of these people who are outstanding anyway, not just any former inmates, because there are various categories of former inmates. But before you even get to that point of saying you're a former inmate, you ought to have merited it in terms of good behavior. So it is expected that those who are coming out, deserve that second chance. And society should also learn to give, maybe perhaps a friendlier demeanor to how we receive these ones. Because in the end, the society will be the better for it or the worse off for it, depending on how we treat them. Absolutely.
It's very important, the stigmatization, as we often term it. It's something that we need to critically work on as a people, that people found themselves as inmates may not necessarily be as a result of certain things they did. We've seen where people were, illegally arrested, if I may use that word, or incriminated with regards to one thing or the other. Of course, you can't start asking them, what did you do? How did you get there? That might just be bringing back certain memories that some persons do not want to remember at all. And it's important that we embrace people, but with wisdom. I think wisdom is needed while you're trying to embrace people, while you're trying to help, because some of these persons are worse off. When they get into the prisons, they mingle with certain criminal-minded persons, and they come out, they are worse off for it. And so where you say you want to help, you become a victim. We have seen people who fell for that. But we are not saying you shouldn't help.
Everyone.
You have to be wise in trying to do that, bottom line. But we're saying that as much as be open-minded, receive people, but then to have some level of caution in terms of wisdom in trying to bring balance to the whole conversation. And we hope that the government will look into empowering these people. It's very critical at this point in our country, because there's so many things. There's a limit to which even family can help people at this point right now. So many persons are finding it difficult to breathe. So wanting to help an extra person might be challenging for them. This is where government still needs to come in to do much more beyond releasing these persons, such that we can have that sanity we need as a country. I believe we have exhausted this conversation right now, and we need to take a breather. When we return, we'll review top stories on the front page of Nigerian newspapers.